And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Scott Fish from 32 Degrees Digital. He's a longtime friend and partner for Unique Venues, and is someone that is incredibly knowledgeable in the area of website development, analytics, search, SEO, Google Analytics, and everything you'd ever need to know about making sure that your website's performing well. And he's going to talk to us today about something that has been a very client requested webinar, which is understanding Google Analytics better. We get a lot of clients that say, hey, I know I should be doing this, or I know I have access to it, but I never go in there, or when I do, I just don't even know where to start. But could you help us understand how to do this better? That's what we're going to try to do today. It might feel a little technical to some of you, and if it does, try to hang in there with us, because know that Scott's really going to demonstrate the power of how Google Analytics can help you in driving and converting leads and bookings at your venue. So Scott, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, excited to be with everyone today. I see some familiar faces, so that's awesome to see. Yeah, as Joel mentioned, analytics really went through this massive change with the GA4 upgrade. Google, forced us all to make that change over the summer in July. And I've seen a ton of industry presentations in my world, in the SEO world, of, hey, how can we learn to not hate Google Analytics 4? We're kind of getting past the point now where we just are grumbling about it, and we actually need to use it and set it up the right way so that we can use the things that we are used to seeing and some of the new features. So today, I want everyone to feel a little overwhelmed, but also feel empowered that they can take some of these ideas and implement them in their own analytics setups and be able to make some better decisions that can be more sales focused and lead driven than they ever have before. We are going to get into some of the weeds. You may have control over your own analytics account, or it may be controlled by the university, or it may be controlled by a technical IT person. So if there's things in here that you want, this will be available that you could pass on to other people, and hopefully get some of these things implemented if you're not the one to do that. I'm going to toggle back and forth between the presentation and some live analytics views to talk about some examples. And as I said, there's a blend of strategy and technical. So we're going to get into some of the really kind of deep topics here, which is kind of what Google Analytics 4 has become, is a lot more powerful of a tool than we've had in the past. So the agenda today is to talk about what changes were made in Google Analytics 4 compared to Universal Analytics, which was around for about 13 to, I think, about 15 years almost. Universal Analytics was Google's first big free analytics platform, and they gave it away just like they do Gmail to get people to be using Google and be engaged. GA4 completely is a new model, essentially. And so we're going to talk about what the differences are. A lot of the differences require us to set up Google Analytics in a different way than we have before. So we're going to talk about some of the metrics and some of the naming conventions that have changed. We're used to saying, how many visits do we have? How many users do we have? What's our bounce rate? What's our conversions that we're getting? Or what events are we tracking? All of that has changed. And so we're going to walk through some of those kind of new naming conventions and talk about how you can use that data differently. And then how can I set up GA4 properly to track visitors, events, conversions, and other connected sources? One thing that GA4 does really well is cross-device and cross-platform tracking. So for instance, if someone clicked on a Facebook link to your venue from your Facebook page and then went to your site, and then 3 weeks later clicked a Google ad and came back and actually submitted an RFP, you can actually see all of those sessions in that conversion, which is something we've all been really wanting. And that's probably the most powerful thing that GA4 does that the industry needed. And then we're going to talk about creating some custom and pre-made kind of usable reports. One of the big changes with GA4 is you kind of have to set it up a lot more, and then you have to set up your reporting a lot more. You get some out of the box things, but it's not as in depth as it was before. But that being said, you can also make very simple reports that you can use for your team and use for sharing with kind of the larger constituents within your organization. So without further ado, let's get into Google Analytics Universal versus GA4. We're really going from a gas-powered car here to a Tesla. This is a completely new system. It has a new energy source. It has new technology. Things break differently. We have a new way to drive. We now look at range versus a gas tank mile per gallon, the measurement, right? So in this analogy, we really are completely changing. It looks the same. It still does the same thing. Analytics is analytics, but all of the stuff that goes into it, the system, the inputs, the way that we look at things, the way that reporting works has completely changed. And I thought this was actually a really good analogy that I wanted to share, because this really helps us kind of understand where we're going with GA4 and some of the changes that have happened. So some of the things about GA4 that are different: browser tracking and behavior is now accounted for across multiple devices and platforms. So as I mentioned, you can see all of that happening as it flows through, not just from a website, but also from other websites like Facebook, or if you're using like a MailChimp, or if you're using HubSpot, some of these lead generation tools. It just gives you so much more control over that data and understanding what's going on. A lot of GA4's changes are actually in response to some of the aggressive privacy changes that the EU has implemented. We're seeing that with Apple iPhones and Android phones as well. And the things we can track are getting a little bit less, or they're getting a little further away from individuals. And you're now becoming a group of people that do a certain thing, we're calling this observable data. And so it's less about an individual, and it's more about a group of people that's likely to convert. So GA4 allows you to get into more data around that. So that's kind of the trade-off here. We can actually get in and see different groups of people that are likely to convert, maybe previous customers. You can segment out all different kinds of things, but in order to do that, you have to set it up. So it's not as simple as just a conversion is a conversion anymore. We have lots of different things that we can use to slice and dice that. Universal Analytics was designed before we kind of operated across multiple devices. We're used to that now. We see something on Facebook, we click into it, then we go home, we open it up on our computer. So what GA4 really tracks now is this concept called a data stream. And it's not necessarily just clicks coming in, but it's the whole stream of your usage of a website and across all these different platforms. So in analytics, you can set up multiple streams and track all kinds of different things. For instance, a LinkedIn lead, coming in on LinkedIn, and then someone goes to your website, and then maybe they give you a phone call. You could track that in analytics much better now than you could before. Universal Analytics reported on sessions and visitors, whereas GA4 actually uses event-based tracking. So it's people doing things that is a visitor. And by doing things, I mean, it's a page, it's someone like starting a session of viewing your website. It's someone scrolling. It's someone clicking on something. Those are all event-based tracking pieces. And so a lot of the analytics data that we can get now is not just a visitor hitting a page, but it's also how often are they scrolling down? When they've scrolled down, then what do they do? So you can really get into the minutia of what somebody does in order for them to actually become a conversion. And then the naming conventions of traffic and leads are different now. So if you're looking at analytics from a year ago or 2 years ago, you're not going to see the same data comparisons. Year over year data is going to look different. If you're comparing just visitor data, it's going to be completely different than what you see. So that's really important to know, especially right now, at least until we get to next July. Year over year data is going to look quite a bit different. I've seen some variances of 20 or 30% even, depending on the website and depending on the scale of traffic that you get. Higher scale traffic tends to be a little bit less different, but if you're getting a couple hundred visits a month, or 1,000 or 2,000 visits a month, your numbers could be as much as 20 or 30% off compared to the previous tracking setup. Okay, so let's talk about tracking users. So these next 3 slides, we're looking at some key metrics in analytics and comparing Universal Analytics compared to GA4, and actually looking at what those metrics are and how the kind of technical side of how these things are being tracked. So a user A total user, or in Universal Analytics, was just the total number of visitors coming into the page. So we have that in GA4. It's the total number of visitors now. Instead of visiting a page, it's the total number of visitors that logged an event. So that initial event that they did. So this comes into play with visiting the page multiple times on your browser, or opening up multiple tabs. If someone does that, that would be a new event each time. So the total user number in GA4 is often higher than the UA number used to be. New users, this is a little bit of a change here. There's this concept of unique user IDs that's set up in GA4. So when you first open up the website or first visit, those are events that are kind of pre-built into GA4. And so those are what actually tracks a new user. So again, that's a new instance of somebody opening up that would count. And it could also be a cross device or cross browser new event, instead of just a single event that gets passed from, a website visit to a social and then back to the website. And then active users, this is a really nice add-on. Google Analytics before, UA kind of alluded to this. It gave you a little bit of insight into this, but GA4 does it really well. So this is a primary metric now that we look at, active users. So it's basically a first visit, a first open that then has some kind of an engagement or user activity attached to it. So oftentimes we looked at bounce rate. And so if you had a 60% bounce rate, if you got 1,000 visitors last month, 60% of them landed on a page and then did nothing else. So we would look at that and say, well, maybe we need to change what this page does and give people places to click and some kind of activity for them to convert through. Now we can look at active users and really see what kind of engagement they're getting on that page, and then see if that is the type of engagement we would want. I think that's a lot more powerful than just knowing that people landed on the page and then did nothing else. So if you have call to actions on your pages, understanding what the engagement looks like and where they're going and what they're doing is pretty important. And so you can track that now with GA4. Page views, somewhat similar to what we had in the past. Page view was just basically a single page being counted and viewed. Now page views are not just a view in a browser, but it could also be a view in an app screen. So I don't know if you've ever clicked into a website from Facebook, and then it keeps you kind of in Facebook and shows you the Facebook's browser, and you're now on the website, but it's through Facebook's browser. It's kind of wrapped almost in it, and you can click the little dots at the top and say, I want to open this in my browser. So that's become super prevalent. Before, we couldn't really track traffic because it was in Facebook's native app. Now we can actually track that much better and see that traffic and see what people are doing. So I think for social media, page views are actually a pretty nice addition to the ability to track in GA4, especially for social media visitors that are coming through. And then tracking conversions. So event tracking and goals and conversions have all really changed. It doesn't mean the same as what it used to mean before. So before in UA, you would set up a goal and basically say, I want somebody to submit a form. And then when that form is submitted and you have a thank you page, it triggers and sends a kind of echo data back to analytics. This would just show up as like one conversion per session, for that goal. Now we have conversion events. And so you could actually set up a conversion event to be multiple things that somebody does along the way. So maybe it's a two-step form, or maybe you want them to submit a form and then sign up for something else like a class, or get in touch with catering and submit another form, right? So you could actually set up multiple conversions for that kind of thing so that they go through and you can track all of that. As noted here, GA4 usually counts every instance that conversion happens. So if they do that twice, that would be two conversions. Before, we would just see it as one goal being completed. And I'm going to get more into this and how to set this up as we get through some of these slides. So now we're going to talk about setting up GA4. And I'm going to talk about a couple kind of mistakes that people often make in setting up GA4. But before we get into that, I want to just show you, I think you can all see my screen here. Okay. Yep. So down here, when you're logged into analytics, going into this admin section, this is where you're going to set up a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. Depending on your admin status, you can see information about the overall account of your Google Analytics account. You could then also see the property. The property is the website that we have things set up for. So you have to set up, if you have multiple websites, you have to set up multiple properties. Data streams right here, this is where you actually say, this is the website that we're tracking, and this is what kind of information we're tracking. And you can see here, it's not just websites anymore. It's, they've built this now so that you can track app data streams as well.
Hey, Scott. Oh, wait, I was gonna say your screen went blank there while it was doing that refresh. Now it's
yeah,
good. You're
yeah.
good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so within here, you have all this kind of data for this data stream. So when we talk about creating events, you have to do it right in here. You have to create or modify different events. When we talk about setting up tags, you do that in here. So this is kind of your, main section where this data is stored and set up. There's also some stuff in here around defining different audiences, defining what an event is, defining what conversions are. You can import data as well. When your Google Analytics 4 account was set up, Google kind of forced a lot of people to just walk through this data migration, that they just pulled your old information over. And when you did that, you actually pulled all the old reporting rules over into GA4. So you kind of have to go in now and reset those up or reassign what some of the events actually are. A really good example is just like an event that maybe was set up for a form fill. Now that's just set up as, instead of it being a conversion like it was before, it's just a regular old event. So we actually have to go in and define that is a conversion. And I'll show you how to do that here as we walk through some of these slides. So it's a lot. This has become bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's more and more things that, Google keeps adding in what you can do here. But it is, because of that, it's become a much bigger platform than it was before. All right, so let's talk about some of these common mistakes. So one of the things is, and these are things you could audit today and just make sure that you're set up with them so that you have things kind of set up. These are some of the easier things I think to do. The default for data retention for conversions is like 30 days. So if you don't change this, your conversion data will disappear magically, and there's no way to get it back. So you actually have to go in under where we were just looking into some of those settings and look at data settings and then data retention, and change your event data retention to be 14 months. If you don't export this data, you're going to kind of lose that year over year, at least 14 months over 14 months. I'm assuming Google will probably change this at some point, but again, this is a privacy law related change that Google has kind of had to make. And they also, by doing this, allow you to track European users, visiting the website and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where this is coming from. But again, it's definitely something you need to change. Otherwise, you're going to lose some of this key data. The other thing is, if you don't set up some custom audiences to start off, you're not going to be able to retroactively do any tracking for those conversions, and you won't be able to see any assisted conversion tracking points. And so setting these up in Google Analytics is really important. And it takes some time, that there's a significant amount of time, to be honest, that it really takes to set up a good GA4 account. But it then allows you to get into kind of multi-dimensional report building that we'll talk about here as we get into some of the later slides. How many times have you looked at your referral data to a website and you get all these weird websites, right? That just don't make sense. They're from different countries and, things that just don't make sense, a bunch of letters and numbers. So you can actually now go in and basically remove unwanted referral data. And that, I've seen some websites, honestly, that kind of get spammed. Maybe they have 1,000 visitors in a month and 200 of them, 20%, are referrals that are just junk. websites that are crawling them just to get visibility. They want you to click on that URL and go to that site. It happens pretty frequently, actually. I know Unique Venues cuts a lot of referral traffic out because it's a much larger scale, and it's a lot of internationalized domain names, like something like a .nl or .in even. Some of those are the common ones that we see. So you go into your configuring of your tag settings, just like where we were looking at before, and you go in and set up a list of unwanted referrals. The easiest way to do this is let your GA4 run for a month or two, go into your referral data and do an export of that, take all the top referrals that you don't want into Excel and load them into this. That's going to give you a lot better view of your actual traffic. It's surprising sometimes how many spammy referrals are there. And it gives us a little bit of a false sense of success when we're all of a sudden seeing big spikes in traffic, and then you go look at it and it happens to just be spam. Once you've set up your data feed and gone through some of these things, I think there's a lot of customizations that allow you to do more with analytics. So setting up an event on a web page for a load or a form fill, and then defining that event as a conversion, that's kind of taking it the next step. So we looked at some of this stuff here. These are some of the things that might be an existing event. And these are basically, things that you can set up specifically to be a type of activity or an event type around a grouping of people. When you're in the events section, you can actually go in and mark it as a conversion. And when you do that, that makes it searchable then in the actual analytics data when you're going in and looking at reports and screens. Otherwise, everything is just grouped up as an event. So as I mentioned, if you imported your old data, all of the conversions or goals that were set up before are just grouped up as events now. So a page view or a added to cart or began a session has the same weight as a form fill submission, which is actually a real conversion. So it's important to segment these out, and it takes a little bit of time to do that. If you have a third-party CRM system that you're working with, like HubSpot or something like that, or you're collecting email addresses through MailChimp or another tool, those are actually set up as events as well. And so you'll need to define, that addition or that submission happened here, and otherwise it just again gets lumped up with everything else.
Hey, Scott, a couple of questions before you jump off this slide as I'm looking through it and just thinking from my perspective on this. So the existing events, the event name column, those are like predetermined choices within GA4. These are all the different possible events, and so you can select which ones you want to keep track of, right?
Yep.
And then what I'm looking at here is that forever, whoever this client might have been, they were determining that someone adding something to a cart or adding shipping info wasn't enough to say that's a conversion. But when someone began checkout, that was a benchmark to say, I want to know when someone actually gets to the I'm ready to start checkout part of it. And then the second level would be, now when did someone add payment info? So they're really measuring also maybe how many people started a transaction and then how many finished it. And the finished is probably really what they would look at as a true sale in that sense. Is that right?
Yep. So a good example here for event venues would be, if you have an RFP submission page, someone going to that is still a page view, but someone starting to fill out the form could be an event that tracks, and then someone actually hitting submit could be a conversion activity. And then you could have something else that you want them to do afterwards that is part of that conversion. And what GA4 allows you to do is link up those conversion activities or those event activities and say, okay, this is actually a real lead that came in because it hit all four of these items. So it's pretty powerful that way. But that's, you can see what it's a little hard to get grasp like what an event is, because there's the general stuff. Like in this case, it's for e-commerce, it's a little bit easier. There's payment information, shipping information, checkout. But you can define almost anything as an event. So like I work with some clients that actually use like booking software for massage studio and wellness places. And they have because it's a third-party website, all that data that happens over on the other website has to get passed back to GA to really track a conversion. So you actually have to define out 4 or 5 different event types based on the page naming convention of that tool.
Yeah.
Which
You,
is what you
you
have to do with HubSpot or these others as well.
you could also do this again. I mean, again, they might not be conversion events, but you could track how many times did someone click on a particular video on one of your pages,
Yep.
right? Or how many times did somebody open up the catering menu PDF?
Yep.
Like all of those
Perfect.
things are available for you to be able to, if you really want to know, be able to set up as events and then track in here, correct?
Yeah, and the PDF example I think is a good one because that's one that I've, for 10 years, like I've always told people, don't make your thing download a PDF, because once they get to the PDF, you don't know where they went, you don't know what they did, it's not
Yeah.
wrapped in your website. Now you can at least understand that they opened that up, that they downloaded it is an event, and then you could set up a conversion goal so that after they've opened it up, if they go somewhere else, you can track that too. So
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
yep. Okay, so one of the things that you can do in GA4, and I've got this next, I think 4 slides have some kind of how-to content here. So if you want to try this at home or in the office, you can definitely do that. I'm not going to go through this in super detail on how to do it. I'm going to talk more about what these are and how you can kind of make some better decisions around this. So if you set up your business objectives in the reports section of Google Analytics in GA4, there's kind of a library of things that you can start with, right? So we have some objectives here, generating leads. If generating leads is important, then you can have some default reports for user acquisition, traffic acquisition, and the best landing pages. These kind of take the place of those pre-built reports that we're used to seeing in Universal Analytics before. Universal Analytics had a massive amount of pre-built reports out of the box. You could scroll down on the left and click into basically anything you want and pull out information. Now we have these in a library with some pre-built reports, and then you can create your own customizations in those libraries really easily. Driving online sales, this could be something around e-commerce, promotions, a purchase journey. A little bit less relevant here, but that is something set up if you have things that you're selling. And then I thought this one was interesting, raising brand awareness. So if you just want to do some analysis on, are we getting our word out there, not just in our website, but like who are we reaching, and are we reaching the right people? And then is our website and other places like Google Ads driving more awareness for us? There's actually some really good default reports here. This Google Analytics or Google Ads campaign is a pre-built library item that ties in a lot of GA4 items, and it gives you more information about your ads that are running and who's seeing those ads and who's clicking them and what they're doing after they come to the website. There's also some really good demographic details in here as well, more so than what we've had in the past. And then pages and screens. So, you can see here, Google's using some of the words of screens, like that's a kind of hat tip to mobile being, more than 60% of our visits today. So people are viewing on their screens, and so you can look at how people are interacting more so with your brand on mobile than they have ever before. And then user behavior, this is kind of the one that I would suggest everyone set up once you have some of your events and conversions moving forward, is to actually go in and kind of load in the libraries of events and conversions. Those are the best ones to really start with, and then you can update after that. So this is what it looks like, or can look like, once you kind of build out some of these reports. One of the cool things about GA4 is you can kind of create a custom home screen for yourself, and it's based on your login, and then you can share it with somebody else. So if your boss or another peer wants to see that same screen or go in and customize it, then you can do that and send it to them essentially. So we've started doing this with some of the clients we work with, where my analytics screen is a little bit different than my client's analytics screen. because they want to look at different things, and put more weight into things than I do, for me making SEO decisions, for instance. All right. So also Analytics Insights is a tool that's been around for Universal Analytics, and now it's kind of on steroids now for GA4. So I don't know if you remember the little pop-ups or messages that we used to have that said, oh, your web page got 25% more traffic to this page than it did last month. And it was just kind of like, cool, that's it. All right, sweet. They've kind of taken that concept and built it out so that you can actually customize what these analytics insights are going to be. So you can say, I want to know if the transportation page or the catering page gets more than 20% visits than it has in the previous year or the previous month, and set that up as basically an insight that would pop up. So if you have things or goals that you're trying to meet as a business that relate to, we need to get more traffic, we want to have X number of more visitors to this page in order for us to get more leads, then you can set up some of these goals, and that'll just help you kind of understand more about what's going on. And you can set these up for other people as well. So for instance, another person could log in and see some of their goals and have them be a little bit different than what yours are. Setting up enhanced event measurement. This is going to overwhelm everybody because I get overwhelmed when I look at it. This is kind of the nitty gritty of setting up some actual event measurement pieces. So you can see here, we have form interactions, someone's starting a form, someone's submitting a form. These are two different events that you can track. And again, it's Google tracking you literally clicking into the form and then ultimately submitting it. So it's not just a page view anymore. It's those individual pieces that add up to that form being submitted. So that's an important thing I think to set up, because if people start the form and then don't submit, you have a low submission rate. Maybe your form's too long. Maybe you're asking questions that are too personal or too much information that they want to give. They don't want to give that much information, or maybe they just don't know that information about their event yet. So they kind of get halfway through and then they bail because they're just not there yet. So those are some things that might be able to help you understand why people are leaving that form more so than not. So I think that's an important thing to look at. Also, file downloads. So not just PDFs, but people can download text documents, other documents, audio, video, and that kind of thing, presentations. So there's lots of things that you can track with that. And then speaking of video engagement is also one that I think is really important for a lot of people right now in the event space. We want to know not just how many people are viewing our videos, but also like how many are starting the process of viewing, how far did they view it, and then did they actually complete that video. So if you run Google YouTube ads in Google Ads, you can actually see that information for your advertising video that you run. Now you can see that same data in GA4 when you have an embedded video on your website. So if you have a venue tour or a sizzle video, something that you really want to understand how much value you're getting out of that, how many people are seeing it, then getting these kind of metrics built into your enhanced event measurement tracking is going to just give you a little more information around are people actually seeing this video, and should we make a new one this year because it's doing so well. Okay. Again, another thing that's a little overwhelming, but I think important. You can set up these things called predictive audiences. So are we reaching the right people? That's a question, right? That we all ask. Are we reaching the right people? Not only through our website, but through all channels. So you can set up some predictive modeling in GA4 that actually tells you if someone's likely to do something based on all of these things that they tend to do before they convert. And so you can get an idea of what your likelihood of somebody or group of somebody's visiting the website, 7-day purchases, or people that tend to book or tend to submit an RFP request within a week. You could set that up as a predictive audience and see all the people that are coming in over the last week, how many of them are likely to convert over the next week or so. So that can be useful, especially if you're feeding traffic into your website from other places like LinkedIn ads, email campaigns, partnerships with other, event venue listing websites. Is that traffic the kind of traffic that we expect? And if you make a change in some of your advertising practices, and sending traffic to your site, you would actually notice the change here in some of this predictive audience data. So it takes a little bit. It's fairly easy to set this part up, but this is all based off of the events and the conversion tracking that we've just been talking about. So that all of that has to be set up for us to be able to get into this and actually build that out. Okay, now we're going to talk about how to build out some more kind of sales driven reports with GA4. As I've been kind of mentioning, GA4 reporting is significantly different. You really have to spend the time to set it up. Unfortunately, it's a day's worth of time, really, to get in there and actually learn about it a little bit more and all that. There is some really good, there are some really good tools that Google has around like certifications and kind of GA4 University that are out there that you could watch some more videos around if you want to get into that. It's a little daunting, but again, it's once you kind of get a grasp of what's being measured and how to kind of pull the levers, you can get in there and make some changes yourself. There's this concept called explorations, and I want to show you what this looks like here. So when you come over here into this tab and click into explore, you're going to get a list of things. Actually, I'm going to just stay on this tab here. You're going to get a list of things that allow you to get more data and see it in a different way. So there's the first one is called a free form exploration. This kind of lets you just build your own customer report. So this is where, like, if you just want to know one piece of data, like Kathy at South San Francisco Conference Center, she does advertising with the Bay Area Business Times. She wants to know how many people are coming in through that ad campaign and how many people are submitting a form. So we could go in and build out a kind of free form exploration that says visitors that came from this URL. We want to know everything that they did, including submitting a form. And that's just one report, right? And then she can go look at that over the 6 months that ad is running and kind of get an idea of what's going on. So I like free form reports for those kind of one-off pieces. You can build multiples of those and kind of stack them essentially. So this is what this looks like now that this is loaded here. So you go to explore, and then you see all these different free form reports here. So I want to show you what one of these looks like as a free form report, because this is where kind of a lot of the magic happens. So you have things called variables, which are basically based off of your dimensions and metrics and segments of the website. And this is like, these could be visitor from a certain place. This could be a visitor that goes to a certain page and all that kind of stuff. And then you can create a form or a graph that looks at certain data. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at people that came into this website, what the source and medium was, and then all of the people that actually converted through that source or medium. And we can see what those are. And we've identified that an event is a conversion. So the event being tracked here is actually our conversions of people booking essentially for them. But there's all kinds of stuff in here. You can kind of just come in here and play with this. I would also recommend, if you feel a little overwhelmed, you can click this here, that little plus button, and then you can actually do a search for a dimension. So if you wanted to know, like, first page views or visitor, downloading a PDF or whatever those are, this is probably the easiest way to get that really quickly. There's over 170 dimensions here that you can track. So this is kind of the nitty gritty of this. Again, it's a lot to get in here and create your custom ones. But I think it's worth doing just to play around and get comfortable with some of that. We also have cohort exploration. So this is another kind of pre-built report that exists in here. So this kind of talks about the behavior in groups and performance of certain groups that have a certain common piece or attribute to them. So you could say, I want to look at all the people that converted, and I want to look at all the things they did on the website, like everything, like all the pages they viewed, where they came from, all that stuff, and actually look at that whole cohort of converted people, and see all that they did and all the interactions that they had. That's pretty powerful if you kind of backtrack that and say, okay, here's the top three things that everybody that converted did. Let's make sure we do more of this. Like maybe they viewed blog posts. Our blog posts now all of a sudden have a lot more value than they did before. Maybe they came in through social media. Maybe our social media campaigns are performing better than we thought. So that's a good way to get in and kind of get some quick insights on that. Funnel exploration. This is another one that you can kind of click into, and it's already pre-built and set up. But basically, this is like, what are the steps that people took in order to complete something? So this is like multi-page or multi-action kind of views of the funnel. I think the most important thing here is that if you have a drop-off in your form fill, or a drop-off in a sign-up process, or a drop-off in something, you would kind of see that here in this graph pretty easily. Segment overlap is another interesting one. So this is I like to use this actually to kind of prove that some of our paid advertising channels are assisting conversions that came in through another channel. At least they look like they did, right? So if someone clicks an ad today for my website and then comes back a week later and searched for us by name in Google, so it would be a branded Google search, and then converted, oftentimes Google Analytics would just say, well, that final conversion came in through Google as a referral, and it was a branded search. But here now with GA4, with cross device and cross platform tracking, we can actually see that our initial ad drove some of those visitors coming in when they converted. And you can see what the overlap looks like in all of your paid visitors and all of your, let's say, organic visitors. And in the middle, those are the common ones that came in and actually converted. So you can get some ideas around that. User exploration. This is kind of more just about individual activities that somebody does. I don't see a ton of value in this unless you're, doing 100,000 visitors, in a month, because you just don't, like, every visitor is kind of unique. You don't really have enough traffic to get larger groups of individual activities. Path exploration. This is kind of cool. It's a little bit of an extension of what we had before with universal analytics, but it actually shows you, like, if someone comes into through one page, let's say they came into your services page, or let's say your event listings page, and on your event venue listings page, you had 4 venue spaces, you could actually see how people are kind of spidering out into those 4 or 5 pages, and where they're going and what percentage of people go to each one. And so that could help you with, like, ordering of, let's say the third one on your list is actually the one that people click into the most. So you could say, well, maybe we need to move that one up to the top because it's the most popular, right? So getting people the information they need quicker. I think that's one really good way to use path exploration. User lifetime. This is also something I think that's useful. People that book with you now and then book with you next year, and then next year, you can get an idea of what their lifetime value is and what they've done over their entirety of their visits to your website. We really haven't had view into that before, so I think that's a pretty cool tool and way to look at some of this information. Okay, also creating some custom funnel reports. So we talked about the funnels. You can create some custom funnel reports based on some of your goals that you've already set up. So this is actually a really easy way to get some reports built out in some of these areas where you just want to look at somebody that's from a certain segment or a certain event that they submitted or a certain event that they completed on the website. There's also templates, and then you can see here this predictive piece here. This is kind of a new thing too, where Google basically will suggest funnel reports based on the data that they see to your website that you should build. And they're kind of already pre-built. So pretty cool. With custom funnel reports, I'm not going to read through all this, but there are some things that are important. You have to include all of your variables in order to get some of these reports. Otherwise, they don't really work. This concept of open and closed funnels is new. Closed funnels require that someone enters the funnel at the very first part. An open funnel means that someone could come in any of the first 5 parts, let's say, and then become a conversion at the end. So they don't have to enter in on the first page or the first part of that funnel starting, which is important. I think if you create some custom funnels of like, we want a conversion and they have to do these 3 steps, you want it to be open because they could come in on the second step and then convert, and you would miss out on them if you had a closed funnel. Again, this is very technical, but some of the stuff that you need in order to get this set up. Yeah, I'm not going to go over the rest of this because we've got some more important things, but there's things here you can go through and take a look at on your own. These custom funnel reports. So that's what we were just looking at in real time with the example of sources. So this is where we can actually say, like, I want to look at, all the people that came in through, I mean, this is a really packed report, right? So this is people coming in on all these steps. This is all the different things that they're doing at those steps. This is the first open or visit, and then this is like desktop or mobile or tablet, and then what the completion rate is, an abandon rate, and all that stuff. So setting this up is pretty powerful. You can really get a lot of good data from this. There's variables, which are like the segments and dimensions and the date range, essentially. You can have different tab settings, so you can set up how you actually view the data if you want it to be a graph or a table or a line chart or something like that. And then the output of this is kind of defining like what kind of things you want to kind of summarize essentially at the top. All of these are savable. The one I showed you earlier is one that I've saved and share with a client, and it's really easy for them to see. And it's all obviously in real time as well. We're getting towards the end here. So triggered event tracking. This is another one that's a little bit newer. So if you go into the reports and engagement and then look at events, you can actually set up some different triggered events. So this is where a report can actually go in and look at like the life cycle of a visitor and see what kind of engagement they have and types of events that they're doing. So if we want to know, page views versus someone scrolling, or page or user engagement activity, and really see how many times that's happening for a certain page or for a certain source of traffic, then you can go in and set this up. And again, you can set up notifications on here if any of these increase by a certain amount or decrease by a certain amount. So if I know, for instance, some venues, you might have a partner that's kind of helping to fund, like a university, or you might have a port or something like that that's tax generating revenue that helps fund. So some of those pages that are supporting those partners are important for you to talk about. And this is where you could actually set up an event to say, I want to track visitors that are going to that. All right. So prioritizing all of this, I think this is the biggest challenge. Is there's a lot of stuff here to do. So I think you need to first determine that you have a meaningful GA4 setup, right? So Google Analytics 4, kind of go back through some of these initial items and look and see if you're actually set up in a meaningful way that's giving you the information that you want. There's a lot of options and a lot of customization that can happen. You don't have to do all of it. You maybe just need to do 10% of it to get what you need. And clean out some of the data that's irrelevant, and build out 1 or 2 reports that's really useful to you. So creating those custom reports, I think, is going to be an important piece. And then there is a website, grow.google. Google is the .com part here. It's free, and it's a really good resource for you to check out and learn more about GA4 and kind of see more of what you can do. I think that's a really good source for anybody to check out. And then one other thing too to do, and a lot of people have done this if you've worked with an agency before, but if you haven't and you are running Google Ads, you need to make sure that your Google Ads and some of your other channels are connected to GA4. This will give you a lot more data to use, and Google Ads platform has moved a lot of people to like maximize conversions as an automated bidding strategy. And they use the data from GA4 now and all of these metrics that you set up in order to get that automated instance happening. And so I think that's an area also to check out and make sure if you're running Google Ads, make sure these are connected. All right, and that is it for us for today. Again, a lot of stuff here. This is going to be available for you after this shortly. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have if you want to type them into chat, or if you want to follow up afterwards with Joel or myself. And if you want to walk through with this in more detail, or you want to, hire us for some consulting, we're happy to do that as well. So thank you all for joining us today.
Yes, and thank you, Scott, for putting this together in a way that hopefully is, again, gives people enough of a glimpse. It really is. I mean, this is why there are, IT people whose full-time jobs are to run and manage and set up and, configure and report out on Google Analytics. And yet the average user, if they can get, like you said, the 10% of what they need kind of set up, or the 2 or 3 key elements that they want to track put together, then it can be a really powerful tool. Again, even to look and adjust things on a weekly or daily or monthly or whatever kind of cycle basis that you want to look in and say, oh, our website's not performing. Why is that? Try to figure out what that is. Or, oh, this Google ad campaign is not generating what we thought it was going to. What do we need to do to adjust that and see if we can drive more traffic? I mean, it's a great way to A/B test a lot of things. So again, if you're developing things to put out there and you want to really know, well, do people like a red background or a blue background better? You need to be looking at your Google Analytics to see what kind of traffic you're getting off of those things. Or do people like the long 5-minute, walkthrough video, or do they like the 30-second sizzle popping video? And which one gets more play? And if we're going to do more work, which areas do we want to do those things in? Or does that just say we have to take the 5-minute video and chop it up into 30 or 45-second clips so that people will maybe watch through from start to finish? So there's a lot of great things that you can get out of this, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it today.